About me and my team here and what we're going to talk about today and why we're digging in. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Deborah Boggs, CEO of DNS Executive Career Management. I am a chief member. I've been a chief member about 4 years now. So, it's so good to see so many friends on the call, too. I know we have past clients and friends here as well. And I brought two of my team members today from my leadership team because we're digging into all of the aspects of what it takes to have an effective executive search at this time. And so I wanted to bring some people on that are working directly with our clients on these things. So first, Dr. Norma Davila, joining us from Puerto Rico, and she is our director of coaching. She leads all things coaching and our programming here at DNS. So hello, Norma. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Deborah. Thanks for having me.
And many of you may know Norma if you've worked with us in the past or if you've been on any of our presentations. And then making his chief debut is Alan Wohan. Hi, Alan. Thanks for joining us. He is our lead executive resume writer. So he is our absolute expert on our team on helping executives really stand out in a tough job market in their executive resumes, their LinkedIn profiles, anything written related as it comes to positioning. So, hi, Alan. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Deborah. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Excited to help.
And Alan is in Wisconsin.
Uh, yeah, don't hold that against me.
I'm a Midwesterner, so but I am on the coast of Maine, if anyone cares, with Carmen. So Carmen Poff is also on our team. She's not presenting today, but she is here. If anyone, she'll be popping links and support into the chat. And speaking of that, the first link, I know many of you already downloaded the Executive Job Search Diagnostic. If you haven't yet, Carmen's going to pop that link in the chat. This will be helpful for you as we go through this presentation. You don't have to download it, but if you do, it'll help you think through some of the areas we're going to talk about that'll be helpful for your search. So, in getting started, let's talk about a little bit about our firm and what we do and why we're doing this call. So, our firm works with senior leaders, typically VP, C level, and board level leaders, to navigate and land your next big opportunity. So whether that's an executive career role, which is what we're talking about today, or launching your board career, or even going from private boards to public board seats, those are the things that my firm does. We work individually with candidates to really navigate that process and all the things that it takes for a senior executive to really stand out and land those top opportunities. And so, as you can see, we have a team, and we work really as a every client that works with us will get several people on their team to navigate their process together. So that's why I brought a couple of team members today to talk about the different areas they are experts in as we think about what we're going to talk about today, which is the executive edge method. And really, what the executive edge method is the seven areas that a senior leader really needs to have locked down to have an effective job search in this market. We all know the market is crazy. It's been a really weird year. The good news is people are getting jobs. We had a client land a seven-figure offer a couple of weeks ago that Norma has been working with. We, are seeing clients land really great opportunities at really great packages. It just takes a lot more effort than it used to. In 2022 or, prior to 2020, things like that, the job market was a lot easier to land something. Right now, it's just a lot harder and it's doable, but you do have to show up with these seven things really locked down to have an effective job search. Because what we're seeing right now, when there's uncertainty in the market, it slows the hiring process down. They're still hiring senior leaders. If a company needs a CEO or a CMO or a COO, things like that, they're still going to hire for those, but they're going to take a really long time making that decision. And so what we're seeing is hiring processes within a company that used to be a few months long are like 5+ months. And so when you get into the interview process and you think this looks good, I'm a shoe in for this job. I really like the firm. 5 months is an eternity in business, right? Anything can happen in the middle of that. And so we want to have as many irons in the fire as possible so that you don't get 5 months down the road, the job falls apart for whatever reason, and then you have to start from scratch. So that's really what we're trying to do is shorten the length of time on the market for everyone. The other thing I want you to think about is number of rounds of interviews. What used to be 3 or 4 rounds right now is 7, 8, 9 rounds for average job processes for senior leaders. That's excruciating. Norma is our expert in the interview process. We're going to talk more about that. But these are the things that we really want you to A, know about ahead of time, and B, come in prepared as possible to really win these offers and shorten that length of time on the market because we're seeing most job processes right now, job searches taking 8, 12 months, right? We want to shorten that as much as possible. So that's what we're doing today. Gives us a little bit of a level set. How do we feel? We good? Okay, perfect. All
Yay.
right. So this is a lot of me talking. I will let Norma and Alan take the stage eventually, I promise. But I'm
We're
going to
getting a lot
start.
of thumbs up, so that means we're on the right track.
Oh, and thanks so much for each of you sharing your LinkedIn profiles in here too. This is great because a big part of this process is networking, and networking with each other will be so important. So thanks for sharing all that. So, number one, and this, I'm sharing this one because it is my stump speech of the most important piece of an executive job search to go well, shorten time on the market, land, higher offers, maximize your compensation. And right now, that is having a hyper focus. Everyone on this call is an executive. So you've done a lot of different things. You can do a lot of different things in your career, but people aren't hiring generalists right now. They're just not. They're hiring hyper specific specialists to solve their unique challenges, which Norma's going to talk a little bit about in a moment. So how do we talk to, how do we build a strong, unique value proposition, a strong resume, a LinkedIn profile that brings in the right kinds of opportunities, things like that, without having a focus? It's like marketing a product without knowing who wants to buy it, right? That you can't put a value proposition to that. So, as uncomfortable it is as it is for most people, we need to get really specific about the role that we want to do and the industry or type of company we want to do it for, because that will allow us to build what Norma will talk about a little bit more around the unique value proposition. But we have to get hyper focused because that focus will then translate and really, be the North Star for every other aspect of our search. And that's something that I see a lot of people struggle with. Norma is also an amazing career coach, and she helps executives think about what those next steps are if you're not sure. So that's something that she works individually with our clients on. If you've got a lot of different opportunities, things like that. But that is the number one piece, is to really get focused. So I could talk about that all day, but it is the piece that I see most executives miss. You go straight to resume writing, you go straight to reaching out to your network, but you don't exactly know what that ideal next step looks like for you. And then the rest of it just it can't be as strong as it could be. How many of you feel like you have a strong focus on what you want? Or how many are still soul searching? Okay, got some thumbs up.
Yeah.
Good. All right. When the thumbs come like this, I don't know. And then they go up. I'm like, is that
They're moving.
still defining it, Caitlin? Yeah, that's
Uh-huh.
perfectly fine. Um, every
Interesting.
time I
Every
think I
time
know
I,
what I want, I realize I don't know. Oh, Laura, I feel that. Bit of soul searching, open to pivots. I'm clear on what I want. Okay, perfect. Everyone's in a different place. And that's the first thing. When people call us and say, I want help with my job search, or I just got laid off, or I'm thinking about making a move, the very first thing we ask is, what does the ideal role look like for you next? And it's not that I don't care what the answer is. I just want to know, do you have an answer? Because that will determine how ready you are for the search. So I'm going to hop off my stump speech here. This is something I talk about in every presentation because it's so incredibly critical. I'm going to pass the baton over to Norma to talk about the second pillar, which is the defining a strong, unique value proposition, which is something she does one-on-one with a lot of our clients.
great. Thanks, Deborah. I'm hearing all these. I mean, I'm reading all these. I'm clear. I'm not sure. I know what I don't want. Knowing what you don't want is really important too. So let's keep that in mind. Start ruling things out. Saying that you've been 20 years in the industry, that you're a strategic thinker, that you've delivered results is not going to get you too far because everybody else has done the same thing. So it's important. It's part of your uh, career. It's part of what you've learned and grown. However, we need to look at what makes you different from everybody else.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting because when I start by asking people, so what's your brand? Most of the clients I work with tell me, I don't know. So we start getting at what that could be, how other people describe you, what people say about you, how you feel about things. And before I know it, they're just going on into all the things that they've done, what they like, how they've so I mean, chosen what they do, what it is that they do it, what they do, and who they do it for. And before we know it, we have the whole story of the brand, what makes them different, who they like to do things for, where are they more comfortable. It's very common to hear clients tell me, yeah, I did that, but I don't want to do it anymore. Or I've been in this type of company, I'm ready for something else. All of that comes through the conversation as Alan is responding to. And it's part of what then I get to have the fun of putting it all together, distilling all that information that comes out in a meeting of about an hour and a half, and getting into 3 to 5 sentences that describe what it is that you do, for whom you do it, and what happens.
Mhm.
And it has to be conversational, but professional. It has to be in your own voice. So I keep picking on phrases and things that my clients have said to make it sound like them. It's theirs. As Michelle Merritt would say, it's not an elevator speech, sorry. And it's not something that you're going to memorize either. So whenever anybody tells me, I gotta memorize this, no, please don't. It's gonna come out.
Reciting it.
Yeah, it's not reciting it. This is not a competition of any kind. It's for you to be able to strike a conversation with anybody anywhere by picking the pieces that you need and being able to speak confidently about what you do, how you're different, and opening the door for a conversation about
Mhm.
whatever could come your way. Because you never know, as I'm sure Deborah is going to get into later, who's going to open that door for you. You have to be ready anywhere. And I mean, when you go pick up your takeout food, when you go food shopping, when you're at the doctor's office, anywhere you can be sitting next to somebody who can have the keys to the castle. So you have to be ready to talk about that and not go, okay, I have to read it. It has to be yours. And that's what we work on. We go back and forth, we revise it, we change things, we tweak it until it's ready for you to take it into the world, use it, and also for Alan to be able to weave it into your documents, not word by word, but the message. So I think I'm ready to pass it to Alan to tell us about how he tells that story.
Well,
Thank you,
real
Norma.
quick.
Yeah,
I'm going to
go.
pop in here.
Sure.
So a couple of ways that you can do this on your own. Since this is really, I want you to be able to do some of these things that if you didn't have Norma with you, right? And so when you think about your unique value proposition, I want you to think about um, the it's going to be what you do, who you do it for, as Norma said, and then what you deliver. And that's really around, thinking about the challenges that your ideal next role has, or that industry or that company type. What's going on for them in the industry, the market, their customers? What do they need from you in that function? And how are you uniquely equipped to solve those challenges? So that's a couple things I want you to think about. And then the other thing is, as Norma mentioned, and I just want to bring this home a little bit, is that your unique value proposition is not a branding statement at the top of your resume. It certainly is part of a branding statement at the top of your resume, but that's not all that it is. It is going to be woven throughout your resume. It's going to guide what information you're going to include and what information you're going to leave off, which Alan's going to get into what an executive resume should look like and how to do that. Um, and it's also going to, be what you weave through your stories on LinkedIn, what you weave into your interview process and your networking. So it's not just a stale few sentences that you recite in an elevator. It's really something that's going to guide conversations. It's the essence of how you do things differently in your market. So I'm going to pause there and let Alan take over and talk about the third pillar, which is building a standout resume that commands attention.
So, Deborah, I'm going to just take that opportunity and piggyback on that with one more statement, especially for those that might be struggling with their clarity right now, is I like to bring in and this is the question I ask, what are the top 2 or 3 intrinsic values or strengths that you might have been born with? Because in some cases, was I born a marketing communication specialist? I might not have been. But was I communicative, or am I a problem solver? What are those intricate values that are the bullseye that show up throughout your life and in those different experiences? That will help your unique value proposition because that's going to be some of the through line along with the functionality and the different accomplishments that come through on the resume. So, with that said, let's jump into the resume. As Michelle would say, well, I'm adding to the story. As Michelle would say, your resume is about you, it's not for you. And so we need to think about this more from a marketing document perspective. So those that sit in marketing, you get to use all of that skill set. And remember, it's not an autobiography. So ultimately, recruiters, executive level, hiring professionals, they're looking for leadership impact. They're looking for what have you led, what have you done, and how did you deliver outcome? Strategic alignment, or does your background fit their goals? And that will align with the job description. It'll align with the networking conversations that you're having. And you're always leaning in, bringing all of what you've done into this is what I can do for you. And that's that strategic alignment. And then business results. Is it quantifiable? Is it outcome driven? In a lot of cases, there's sensitive information and NDAs and etc. We maybe don't always have the impact that drives particular metrics that we can report, but ultimately, what did you do that had an impact both for the organization, yourself, your team around you, and that made everything better? We're leading with success stories. And so, what we want to avoid in our resume is long job descriptions, vague summaries. And Norma mentioned it earlier 25 plus years in doing this. And a lot of times that's going to sound very redundant. It's going to sound like the other candidates out there. So we want to move away from those and really, again, come back into the impact. This is what I can do for you. I've done that in the past. That's the success. I'm the subject matter expert. I have my career behind me. If I'm making a pivot, this is how it transfers. If I'm looking for the next role, I've been doing that level of duty. If it's currently where I'm at or I want to move, maybe it's board. Okay, I am positioned to do that because of these things. And we need to communicate that through line. It's a story, it's a brand narrative. So you should have your resume should read like a leadership case study, not that timeline, not that chronological effect. That'll become boring and they'll pass over very quickly. So we don't list too many bullets, and it has to be on point and succinct. It can't be irrelevant. If there are some metrics, if you mention budgets and portfolio or high level optimizations and integrations, what are the metrics behind that? What was the outcome? What and then of course those generic opening statements that Norma mentioned. Those are probably the top three things that I see over and over that we have to spend time unpacking and thinking about how can we get there and elevate that quantity or elevate that impact, elevate the leadership, the strategy, and the business connection so that it's relevant at the level. Remember, it's not about you, and that's hard for us to let go of. Gosh, I've done all of these things in the past. Not all of them might be relevant, especially if you're making that pivot. We need to use what's most relevant. Keep this also in mind when if you're building out your own information, the last 10 to 15 years max is relevant. And how do we spin that in a sense to make sure that it connects for the reader? So remember this, a strong resume is a first impression. It demonstrates your executive presence. It is kind of the paper form of a handshake. Nice to meet you. Here's some information about me. And that leads me over to LinkedIn. They're going to somewhat immediately, statistics are very high that hiring professionals are jumping over to LinkedIn and they want to see that executive brand story visibility. So the resume is just part of that visibility. And the next opportunity is generally click, here's your resume, click, here's LinkedIn, or potentially other social media or other mediums where they might find you, or if there's white papers, speaking engagements, etc. I want to know and I want to see. Some of that is just real quickly. They want to see your picture if they don't have it. They want to have a little bit of a personality vibe or cultural fit and determine in the things that they're seeing, primarily on your LinkedIn profile, is that connecting? Is that going to be a cultural fit here? Does this person speak and communicate within the industry, within their market, for the type of work that they do? Are they relevant? And that usually will then take that first impression or that first handshake of your resume and it solidifies the let's have a conversation. Remember, the LinkedIn is the front door then of your professional brand. So here's some typical mistakes. Your headline is too generic. So it might say just your title. It might say that I'm strategic, and that's important, but then maybe we need to package that with some other qualifiers, or maybe lean into some of the functional aspects of what you do or the industry. If you're making a pivot, we're looking for those transferable skill sets. And as I mentioned earlier, just even those intrinsic values that sit at the bullseye of who you are and kind of thread through everything you do and really are the payoff for you. A lot of times that's where you're going to start seeing that. And so LinkedIn can be a little bit more personable. In your about section, you can use first person. We won't do that on the resume. We'll keep that a little more formal. But on LinkedIn, they really do want to hear you say things where you sit at the intersection of strategy and sustainability, and you want to bring betterment to the world, or you want organizations and internal, external shareholders to really be able to drive or lead into certain areas or the depth of the work that they do. And so it's okay to bring that information in. Don't be passive. It should sound like you, it should be confident and forward focused. And to go back to Norma's work, when she's working with you on strategy and your unique value proposition, the confidence comes in that hard work of doing the homework and reflecting on everything you've done to say, no, I know who I am. And this is where I want to go. And when you get into those like-minded conversations, you start using LinkedIn for networking. And I believe Norma and Deborah are going to talk about some of those facets next. When you start leaning in, all of a sudden you'll find out that your resume and your brand and the consistency between your resume and your LinkedIn profile starts to speak the same likability, the same concepts, the same industry, the same market, the same type of functionality that you want to do. And for those positions or those conversations that you already know a little bit of information about. So your leadership story is about being in the market. You might post once or twice a week. You might share some white paper information. You might just share some thoughts. Of course, stay away from any hot button topics that might be disqualifiers, but make sure you lead with clarity, results, and relevance. I can't stress that enough for both your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Visibility goes beyond just optimization. Hey, here I've updated my experience. This is everything I've done, and this was a new role I had. That's true, but that is valuable real estate. And there are many, many recruiters on LinkedIn, especially executive headhunters. There's talent acquisition, HR staff, and professionals. They are in the business of having a book of business. And so make sure that you're a candidate that is positioned to be a part of that book of business for them. Share your insights, comment on the trends, engage authentically. And you can do that through your connections. And we're doing that here. Even on this webinar, you are sharing your links, and let's do the same thing. That's already beginning of the process, as you know. So when these work together, you have your consistency, you've built that trust. That little bit of trust opens the door to new opportunities because now you are relevant. Deborah?
Right. It's so true. Alan, this is so helpful because it's just like in sales, right? People do
Mhm.
business or hire people that they know, like, and trust. And part of that is really thinking about that LinkedIn profile differently. The resume, we talked a lot about we went very high level into a much deeper topic. We do whole day long presentations on building a standout resume, right? We could go very deep. But for today's conversation, that LinkedIn profile is really how you address your executive visibility. When we're working with a candidate, and the way I'd like you to think about your own LinkedIn profile is we're not just writing the content to position you for the roles you want, but we're also optimizing it to make sure you're showing up in all potential searches. And that starts with having a strong, optimized LinkedIn headline. I know Alan touched on that. What I want you to think about is that is the most valuable real estate on your LinkedIn profile because number one, it's most heavily weighted for keyword optimization, but it follows you everywhere you go on LinkedIn. Anytime you comment on something, your headline shows up. So it's who you are, what you do, who you do it for, right? Or some combination of that. So that people understand, you know, the things that you bring to the table, and that you can see that everywhere you're in. If they look up candidates or do a search, you come up. It's your picture, your your name and your headline everywhere. The other thing is we're doing the optimization, and then the third thing is the executive visibility, the visual presentation of your profile. And Alan touched on this. It's going to have a featured section. It's going to be really focused on what you want to do right now. It's going to have, links and images, a thoughtful background image. All of these things are important to elevate you to look like a senior leader in your field that is on top of the game, because that's who you're competing against, right? At the executive level, and I know I didn't touch on it early, but we're competing against the absolute best in our industry. And it's different than when we
Mhm.
looked for a job earlier in our careers. And the majority of our clients have built careers through their networking, promoted, getting recruited, and they've never had to take themselves to market at this level before, or haven't in this kind of a market. And so, what does that look like? And it's a completely different game. So that's why we think a lot about LinkedIn. And I want you to think about your headshot too. This is something people really struggle with, wanting to update a headshot, things like that. But I want you to think about that headshot needs to do two things. It needs to look exactly like you look today, so that there's no mismatch when someone meets you or sees you on a Zoom call. And it needs to look like how you would walk into an interview. So, we want to think about how would you walk into an interview? That's what we want, because that picture is actually our first impression. Because people aren't going to meet us in person before they see our LinkedIn profile headshot. So it's actually a crucial piece of the puzzle that I want you all to think about making sure. And then also, we're going to get really nerdy here, but a headshot that is like collarbone up and just your face performs better looking at the camera, because people can't, they want to make a human connection with you. And if they can't see your facial features clearly, they can't make that human connection in their brain, and it doesn't perform as well. So if you have like a full body, or even like a torso photo, and your face is small, it's not going to perform as well. So that's just a small tip seems in the weeds, but also matters a lot. So I wanted to point that out. Oh, yes, Alan.
If I can again add to that, also the background image. A lot of times I get that question on, okay,
Mhm.
what should I do back there? There's generic templates within LinkedIn. I wouldn't recommend one of those. And even just a neutral gray background when you create an account. I'd recommend trying to pull something in that is, again, a splash of personality, but also
Mhm.
probably industry or market driven, field driven, so that my classic example is a tech engineer will typically have something like a small computer chip on a motherboard, and it's a real close-up picture, and it just represents that they're in the technology field. And so have something that represents a little bit, stay away from puppies and your pets, and once in a while a landscape will work, as long as there's maybe a nice connective story of grit and resilience behind that. But ultimately, make sure that aligns. And then, Deborah, I'd love to maybe just head off what could be a sticking point, is because earlier we said things are very specialized right now. That's true. So, okay, if I'm pivoting and I need to have transferability in my LinkedIn profile and my resume, how do I speak to specificity while the LinkedIn account, it can't necessarily be static, but it is in some regard. And so there's generality there, there's breadth and depth. What do I do with that? And I just want to reinforce that you pointed out your featured section. It might be projects somewhere in your optimization, different organizations that you connect with, the types of posts that you have, if you're making that pivot or that transfer. Those are the ways that you can then have this subset mentality and layer to it that says, I do all of these things, and ultimately I could probably be specialized for you in one of those areas. So in the middle, here's my through line. These are the things I've done. This is what I can do for you going forward. Precious real estate to make sure it's coded and keyworded for recruiters and the searches out there, but then fill in those gaps in the other ways, kind of the glue of your LinkedIn.
Deborah,
Perfect.
and
Thank you
before
so.
we
Oh, yeah.
continue, I'd like to capture the moment. Oh, sorry, that we're
Please go
getting
ahead.
into suggesting things for those of you who are earlier in your search, because I meet with a lot of clients who tell me, oh, you mean I'm supposed to have speaking engagements and feature stories and conferences? I haven't done that in 20 years. I've been doing this every day. Don't make that mistake. Get out there. Anything that you can to start getting that visibility, to get other people to see you, will help you to get Alan to pull those things out into your profile if he's writing it, or for you to be able to have that exposure and that evidence of everything that you're doing. So, again, use these hints as ways to start preparing those of you who are earlier in your process and those of you who are more advanced to polish what you have so that you make a better first impression and you tell your story in a more compelling way.
Norma, I love what you said about polishing what you have because I find that usually when we start that digging and getting that information out, it's out there in some form, or
Mhm.
you did something 15 years ago or 5 years ago, or you developed this internally, etc. And the humility that most of us have, because we don't like to talk about ourselves either on LinkedIn or our resume, is that I've done a lot of those things. And well, it's not a big deal. It was extra. I did that. No, 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 no. It's okay to have a little bit of the toot the horn moment and say, let's just polish that, that this was another, again, example of an achievement, a success story, an honor, an accolade, something where I can polish that and position that and say, this is something that I did. I don't want to rob that from anyone of the work that they did.
Huh.
Absolutely true. I appreciate that so much. And, I know this gets into the thought leadership piece of it, which is a little different than LinkedIn. But when you think about your features section, if you're looking to ramp up your thought leadership, or you want to show that you have some external industry expertise, especially if you've been internal. I mean, we worked with a C-level at IBM about a year ago, and she worked her entire career at IBM and had an amazing career, but had no network outside of the company, right? And so these are some ways to get seen. And so we like podmatch.com. It's really cheap. You can do it month to month, and it allows you to get a couple of spots on podcasts that you can then put in your featured section. Write a blog post, or an article about it on LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. But this is an easy way to get some traction, to get some executive visibility without maybe having to, speak at an event or do a bunch of RFPs for speaker, things like that. So I'm going to pause here. How are we feeling? Is this resonating with everyone? Can you see how you can use this info to elevate your own search?
I'm seeing some yeses.
Great, perfect. I can only see three of you, but I really appreciate that the three of you that I can see are super engaged. Perfect. And then speaking of tooting your own horn, I want to give a shout out to Karen for her kind note in the comments about working with us as a client.
Yes.
Really appreciate you, Karen, and thank you so much to give a little insight into what it's like working with us.
Oh, you guys are the best. I will say that. So, like I said earlier, I'm just getting into my job search because I intentionally took time off to travel. So, I'm really just getting started, but just the feedback that I've had has been incredible. I can't say enough about Deborah, you and your team. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. That was really kind. Okay, so we've gone through the positioning, right? And this is where most clients or job seekers stop, where they think that this is the pieces they needed, which is, getting your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and you're done, right? And you're not done. Here's the other pieces that are absolutely critical for an executive job search to really, land faster at a higher compensation, because that's really what we're about and what we're trying to help all executives do is shorten time on the market, increase those final offers. And the reason shortening the time on the market is so incredibly important is because, for our average client, if you're making, say, $350,000 a year, every month you spend in your search is costing you $29,000 a month. And that is really stressful when those months start to pile up, right? And so this is why shortening that time on the market is so incredibly important. And so on that topic, we're going to talk about the piece that so often is missed by executive job seekers, which is building a comprehensive go-to-market strategy. Just like you would in your job, just like you would for a product or a service, you need to build a go-to-market strategy that is going to get you out in front of the right people. And this is something that is so often missed because, as you've probably heard 100 people say before, online applications are not the right choice for senior leaders. And there's a ton of reasons for that. But instead, what I see is senior leaders see a job online, they go all in for it, they spend all this time tweaking the ATS optimization and the keywords on their resume, they apply, and then it's crickets. And it's crickets for a ton of different reasons that we don't have time to get into right now. But what I want you to think about is the go to market channels that actually make sense for senior leaders. And so there's three channels I want you to focus on. It's working through your network, which we all know, but it's around either building or activating a network. So if you're looking to move into a new industry, you don't have a network there, things like that. We need to think about building that network and then activating. Again, this is an entire day's worth of content that we could talk about in networking, but I want you to think about that as one of the channels. The other channel is working with recruiters. Now, that's not the right choice for everybody. And especially in this market, it's a little bit of a harder choice. But if you are going from an apples to apples role, you either just left your role or you're still in seat, then you're a good candidate to work with recruiters. But if you're looking to make a pivot, you've been off for a while, you took some time out, you're looking to change industries, any of these things, recruiters are not going to be the best channel for you because they're mandated to fill apples to apples roles and they're just not going to be able to move the needle. And so what I see a lot of people do is, oh, I keep reaching out to recruiters and I keep getting rejected. I'm just going to die alone with my cats. No one wants me. No, that's not true. It's just they're not the right channel for you. We need to think about going about the search differently. So then the third channel that we really dig into is focusing on companies and not opportunities. Because when we're applying to opportunities, we're hopping into this giant list of candidates that are already, fit exactly the profile of the criteria they've already put down that they want, right? There's no way we can compete in that kind of environment. Instead, what we want is to have a company meet us first, a CEO, if you are a CMO or whatever it may be, whoever your hire manager would be, have them meet us first and think, oh, wow, Louisa is amazing. How do we fit her into our company? Versus, does Louisa have all of these criteria that we already have on this predetermined rubric against these 200 other people? So when we think about focusing on companies and not opportunities, when Norma's working with a candidate on that, we're really narrowing down what are those companies, and then we are physically building lists of those companies, the people you need to reach out to, the conversations you need to be having, what you're going to say to them. For clients that work one-on-one with us, we're getting really deep into that, but that's something that you can do on your own as well. We love Crunchbase data for this to build lists of companies. We have a subscription to it. It is paid, but it is a paid tool, but it is really helpful in building really specific lists of companies that you can start then networking into. So those are the three channels. Everyone's channel and mix of effort is going to be a little different depending on your search, what you're looking for, what you just got done doing, all of these things, whether you're making a pivot or whether you're looking to grow in your career, whatever that might be. But I want you to think about those are the three channels you should be spending your time on and not spinning your wheels in online applications that are really getting you nowhere and they hurt your confidence because you get rejection after rejection after rejection. And a healthy sense of ego and self-worth are incredibly important to a successful executive job search, right? Because they're paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars to deliver, 10x your salary, and we need to have confidence to say that yes, we can do that. They're not going to hire someone who's like, well, I think I can, but everyone hates me lately, and I got fired, and my boss, I had a problem. We have to keep our confidence level up. Alicia asked, and I don't know if you sent this before I addressed it or not, but what are your thoughts on direct outreach to CEOs? I love it. Target companies are important, and having those conversations or networking into those target companies, all of that is really important as an option, especially if you're making a pivot, because a pivot is going to have to be done through one-to-one connections and not through online applications or through recruiters. And sometimes the only way to do that is to meet companies. And sometimes it's maybe not necessarily direct calling them. Maybe it's what conferences are those kinds of founders at? Where are they hanging out? Where can you be meeting people organically and then having the conversation? Or what do they put out in the news? What, that you can reach out and say, wow, I saw the work you're doing in XYZ. That's fantastic. Here's how I feel like I could help you do this, this, and that. So these are all options. I'm gonna pause there because now we're going to talk about the interview process. And Norma works really well with our clients on navigating this interview process because as you may have seen so far, it can be, there's so many steps in this process that it can be everything from meeting with the HR assistant or the recruiter sourcer kind of 22-year-old all the way to presenting to the board, right? And that's a different audience in every conversation. So I'm going to pause and let Norma take over.
Okay. Yeah. One comment about the cold calling, it's easier if you can get an introduction to that CEO because you can get the conversation going in a different way. Cold calling is a little riskier, but it works for some people. However, let's get into interviews. When it comes to interviews, you need to be thinking about that executive presence that Alan mentioned, even when you're on a phone call, because everything is going to be conveyed. Those emotions that Deborah was talking about, oh, I feel miserable because I haven't been able to get, that's going to come across. So You have to be ready to show your best self in every possible contact. Now, one of the things that we need to do is, of course, you're going to research the company. You're going to find out as much as you can about the people who are going to be interviewing you at each stage of the process. And you're going to come up with examples. Did I say examples of all the things that you've done and the answers that you have for those challenges that Deborah was mentioning? Because you're going to be the solution to their headaches.
Right.
And the only way to be able to do that is by showing that you've already been there, done that, and can do it again.
Right.
And there's even more to it. There may just be something in those conversations you had before without even getting to an interview where you can go, this is what I think you should be doing. And you could end up creating your own job for them. So
Right.
that's something else to consider. We've had a couple of clients do that this year. So back to the interviews, because they're unavoidable. You want the framework. I mean, you have to go through that. It's not going to come from FedEx to your doorstep. You have to be there. When I was referring to the examples, you want to think about the STAR plus T model. What was the situation? What was going on? What was the task? That's the T, what you had to do. Action, what you did. R, the results. And it's plus T because you have to tie it back consistently to what the role is about.
Yes, tying it back is the missing link.
Yeah, usually that's where our executives miss the point. They don't connect it.
And yes, on Deborah. That topic, so I was at a conference last week in Southern California with our chief strategy officer presenting for board candidates, and the global head of the CEO and board search for Spencer Stuart was there. And he said, every career conversation needs to be me, then you, then we, right? Here's about what I've done. Here's how this ties back to you. And here's how we can do this together in the future. And I think that's such a powerful way to think about these tying it back. It has to tie back.
Yeah. And you have to be ready not to use all the same examples all the time, because assuming, as Deborah was saying, that you're going to go through several rounds of interviews, these people are going to talk to each other. They're going to say, I mean, why is it that I'm only hearing one or two stories? Didn't this person do anything else?
Right.
So you want to keep it alive. It's your career. You're owning it. You're sharing it. You're answering the problems they have. But you're also approaching this as a conversation, because it's really a conversation between two or more people who are figuring out whether they want to pursue the relationship further. And that means you're not going to memorize your stories. You have them, you internalize them, but you can adapt them to whoever it is you're meeting with. It's not the same to talk to that 22-year-old who's still wet behind their ears and going check, made it through the requirements, passing on to the next phase, as to, yes. Deborah, you wanted to add something.
I was going to say exactly right. This person doesn't understand what you do. You're not trying to sell them on the job. You're just trying to hit those initial conversations are just about meeting minimum requirements.
Yeah, because they want to filter you out so that they have less things to go through. Exactly. But you want to stay in. And then when you get to your subject matter experts, you have to show your stories in a different way so that they know that you know what you're talking about. Whether that's strategy, that's operations, whatever it is that you were doing. Along the way, you're observing what's going on, you're listening to what's not being said, and you're getting ready to ask questions. Please don't ask anything that can be found on social media or the websites or any public information. You want to
what is it like to work here? Yeah.
Oof.
We're asking thoughtful, thought-provoking questions.
Yeah. Or even if you want to get to know what it is like to work here, could you describe a typical day for this role for me? And you'll get more information about the culture than you would actually get by what's it like to be here.
Right.
One thing that I want you to keep in mind is to prepare for those please don't ask me questions. And the please don't ask me questions are the questions you don't want anybody to ask you. The ones that get you uptight, anxious, and you lose your executive presence just by thinking about them. Things like, what happened between this role and this role? There's a gap here.
Right.
What were you doing? What else was going on? Why did you leave your last role? Especially if it was not a very pleasant situation.
Right.
You have to have your answers ready so that you can speak to the issue, make it short, and move it forward. My
Make it
role
short.
was, make it
Yeah.
short. Don't dwell on it, because all that other stuff, all that other emotional weight is going to come out, and you don't want that. You want to leave
And
that
we
in your
overshare
past.
and we give way too much information. We
Oof.
want to drive the conversation forward. We don't want to gloss over it, but we want to drive forward.
And as Deborah has said with some of our clients, don't propose in the first date. Don't
You're not
share
trying to
too
share
much.
everything.
Don't bring that plan that you created to solve all their issues on the first interview. Save it for later. Mention that you have it. Create intrigue. Get them to want to know you better. And don't waste your time doing things that you don't need if you don't pass to the next round. Besides, it's your product. It's your intellectual